Thank you, Rob. I believe that most of you know that Israel was one of the first nations to try and approach the cyber domain and develop a national strategy with a governmental resolution in 2011, which established a national cyber bureau in 2012, and then with two other governmental resolutions establishing the National Cybersecurity Authority in 2015, and another resolution regarding how to build the robustness and resilience of the Israeli market. Together, Israel is trying to be on the right course, and I hope this is the right course of how to move on. But there is another small nation which I believe is also an example of how to take a comprehensive view of what nations should do in the cyber domain, and this is Singapore. And I have the privilege here to ask Mr. Gabriel Lim, Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Communication and Information of Singapore, to be here with us, and I ask him to try and give us a view of what Singapore is doing in the cyber domain. Mr. Lim, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you. I'm very honored to speak to you today and also very happy to be back in Israel. I was just in Israel for the first time in my life last month and came away with a very profound appreciation of what makes Israel so special. I also had the honor of having dinner with Professor Ben Israel, who hosted me to a lovely meal in downtown Tel Aviv. And as an economist by training, I know that there is no such thing as a free dinner. Invited me to speak at Cyberweek, I happily agreed. Today, I would like to share with you Singapore's perspective. I cannot claim to be Gil Shwed. I don't have a background building up a global giant like Check Point, but this is a view from a nation state, a small nation state, which I hope will be useful to all of you here. And let me start with what some of you might consider a bold statement, which is that cybersecurity is existential for Singapore. It's a matter of life and death. That's a word that General Alexander used earlier, and I certainly think it applies to Singapore. Why do I say this? First, because Singapore is a very small country. We are only 3% the size of Israel, less than half the size of the Golan Heights. And for small countries, security is number one. We have a saying back in Singapore that when elephants fight, the ants get trampled, they get stepped on. There's a second part to that saying. When elephants make love, ants get trampled too. So the moral of the story is, ants get trampled no matter what, and Singapore is an ant in a jungle of elephants in the international arena. And therefore, I think it is imperative to do And therefore, I think it is important for us to do what is necessary to secure ourselves, to contribute to a peaceful international environment, to have domestic stability, race relations, social harmony, and as well as to have political stability for long-term planning and execution. And most of all, I think, security in our own and our foreign service have worked together to enlarge our strategic space and it's given us the room to prosper, to develop. But our efforts have traditionally been applied to conventional threats in our region. The cyberspace is a new frontier with no regard for geographical boundaries. And as Gil said earlier, we are all under attack. Cyber attacks are powerful tools of intelligence and influence, and we have seen how this had impacted countries like the US and France. General Alexander mentioned that earlier in his dialogue. And frankly speaking, if big elephants like the US are vulnerable, more so small ants like Singapore. And we do, in fact, experience these attacks from time to time. They are mounted by foreign actors. They try to influence our societies and our government. And one thing, which is why we have to be constantly on our guard in terms of cybersecurity, because if we're not careful, we may become a puppet of a foreign master pulling our strings through cyberspace. So that's the first reason why cybersecurity is existential for Singapore, because we're small. The second reason is because cybersecurity is the cornerstone of a digital economy. And in Singapore, that is again paramount to us because economic stability and prosperity is essential to our survival. We are already very wide. Every Singaporean has on average, in fact, and we are also ranked first in global indices like the World Economic Forum's Network Readiness Index, which is just last year. We see the digital economy as the future. We aim to be the world by a vibrant and successful digital economy. And this year, we had a ministerial committee on the future economy chaired by our Minister for Finance. The recommendation was very clearly embracing of our development. And we're making huge investments in digital economy infrastructure. For example, we are leveraging Internet of Things to manufacturing to the next level. We are developing a national trade platform to make it easy nationally and do so much more efficiently. We just launched an SME Go Digital program to bring small and medium-sized companies into the digital age. Embracing the digital economy will create new and exciting opportunities. But at the same time, connecting ourselves digitally also opens up new risks. The theft of $80 million from the Bangladesh bank was just an example of how vulnerable the digital economy is to cyber threats. And then, the more we embrace the digital economy, the more it is also important to ensure that we are cyber secure. Because otherwise, cyber attacks can easily undermine our economic prosperity and affect all our peoples. The third and final reason why cybersecurity is existential for Singapore is because it is critical to engendering trust. Trust in a world where people, citizens, are interacting and communicating much more with each other online. We are already in a rather unique position in Singapore. We are one of the most trusted nations worldwide, and the World Economic Forum ranks Singapore first in the world in terms of public trust in politicians. That, by the way, is not a contradiction in terms. And as we deliver more public services over digital platforms, cybersecurity becomes more and more important to preserving that trust. I'll give you one example. We are rolling out a national smart nation sensor platform that's going to plug the entire island of Singapore into a grid, a network of sensors, including all 100,000 of our lampposts. It's going to collect data, it's going to help us analyze data, and the end product of all this is to create and deliver better public services for our citizens. Now, at the same time, I think we will do better for our Singaporeans, but the public will also reasonably expect, they must respect, that the data will be properly taken care of, that transactions will be secure, that the basis upon which they are exchanging information with one another in the government is kept confidential and protected. And if there are cyber breaches that compromise confidential personal information, or more importantly, corrupt the sources of data that form the basis for public policy, medical records, military data, and so on and so forth, then that trust will be eroded. And trust is like a very expensive, very antique vase. Once trust is broken, once the vase is broken, it cannot be put back together again. So that, I started off by saying why cybersecurity is essential for Singapore, existential for Singapore. Those three reasons: we're small, we're digitally connected, and because we want to engender trust. And I would say that these attributes are by no means unique to Singapore, but it is the important role that each of them plays in a Singapore story, and more importantly, the interplay between all three factors that makes cybersecurity much more critical to Singapore than many other countries. So what are we doing about that? Well, the first order of business was to set up a national cybersecurity agency, the CSA. This was done in 2015 under the Prime Minister's office. Meviata talked about that. And previously, the work of securing our cyberspace fell on several agencies. Everybody worked hard, but coordination was a little bit difficult. I wouldn't go so far as to say it was a balagan, But at the same time, we knew we could do better by putting it all together under a single agency. And so after careful thought and many pieces of advice from experts around the world, including Professor Ben Israel, we established the CSA. And so far, I think we've made encouraging progress. Just recently, the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, ranked Singapore first in its Global Cybersecurity Index. It is a positive first step, but we know we have a long journey to go. One of CSA's first tasks was to develop our national cybersecurity strategy. There's 4 pillars over here. First, to strengthen our critical information infrastructure. Second, to foster a safer cyberspace. Third, deepen our cybersecurity capabilities. And last, let me elaborate. First, we are strengthening our critical information infrastructure, our CIIs. While CSA is the national authority, it cannot single-handedly take care of all the CIIs. Every sector is part and parcel of this. Each with a sector lead, which is held by a government agency, with the mandate to take care of the CIIs under its charge. And we have also put together a national cybersecurity response plan, and we roll out exercises to test that, and we have obviously incident response teams set up for times of crises. Also taken some structural decisions to strengthen our CIIs. One example is within the government sector. Last year, we took a fairly brave step to separate network. My colleague David, just after we announced this, and at a point in time when we announced it, the decision came under a lot of scrutiny. Many critics change management had they gotten used to the convenience, but they were not aware of risks and how open and vulnerable we were. But we managed to do that. We took a year, many intense consultations. We also had a Jaga here is the Malay word for guard, as a little cute emblem for cybersecurity. With internet separation, our government systems now are much more secure, but we know that we can't take a cookie-cutter approach. CII sectors to see how we can improve the quality of the protection they have. Our second pillar, together with our businesses and the public. Everyone has to be a citizen soldier or a defender. We organize roadshows to educate the public on cybersecurity. We also work with our companies, business associations, to level up private enterprises to make sure they have the minimum standards of defense in place. I thought our recent response to WannaCry was quite telling in terms of just how important it is to take a national approach. First occurred security agency to assess the situation, public assistance desks seek help if they need. Incident reporting rather with the public so we could respond more quickly, and we publish update malware and basically take the necessary precautions and the spread of WannaCry. Infections in total, just how important it is to take a holistic. Our third pillar is to deepen our cybersecurity capabilities, especially among our people. We are launching our cybersecurity professional scheme to raise the quality of cybersecurity professionals in the civil service and in the government, and we have a program to convert professional ICT manpower. One major move recently was to set up it's a new cyber command which will oversee military cyber policy, training, network monitoring, and defense. It will handpick our conscript soldiers and build up a force of about 2,600 over the next few years. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's on the same level as 8200. That would be quite a stretch. But we believe that the Defense Cyber Organization will serve an important role in grooming young talent and preparing them for rewarding careers in cybersecurity. The supply of cybersecurity professionals is only one side of the equation. We have to take care of the demand side as well, and which is why the Cybersecurity Agency is working very closely with companies to bring leading MNCs to Singapore, to grow our local enterprises, to work with think tanks, research institutes, and universities like our capabilities. So to the companies out here, to academics, to entrepreneurs, to government officials, if you're interested in coming to Singapore to see what we have to offer, Singapore is open for business and we welcome you here. The final pillar is to strengthen our international partnerships. I think this goes without saying. As a small country, we value international partnerships very much. We're doing it very extensively in the Southeast Asian neighbors. We have a ministerial conference on cybersecurity, and we also have a training program where we've contributed money to build up capacity among our Southeast Asian neighbors. But one area where we are trying to build upon is really to work with other like-minded countries on protecting supranational CII. These are international platforms like payment gateways, like port operating systems, like air traffic control operating systems, where the impact of a cybersecurity attack on one hub has transnational global repercussions. In areas of port management, Singapore has just tied up with the Netherlands to actually work together on this. We send our officials to each other's cybersecurity training exercises, and we are doing more to exchange information about cyber threats and how to respond to that. And we think this is a useful model for us to work bilaterally or multilaterally with many other countries, and we look forward to doing our part to achieve this goal, this collective goal for the international community. But as I say, ultimately, international cooperation should not just be confined to formal partnerships like what I just described. Gatherings like Cyberweek are actually equally important because they bring together a diverse range of stakeholders to discuss these issues in an informal, candid manner. And I want to thank and congratulate Professor Ben Israel for starting up Cyberweek and on its 7th edition. I think they deserve a lot of credit for putting together a very valuable platform. And in Singapore, we are trying to do the same. We have a Singapore International Cyber Week. This year's, it will be the 2nd edition. It will take place from 18th to 21st of September, right after the Singapore Formula One night race, for those of you who are interested. So if any of you are keen to come, please pop by. We warmly welcome you to join us at ICW and hope to see you there. I hope my sharing has given you a useful glimpse into how a small country like Singapore sees cybersecurity. It is an existential issue to us, and we have worked out a national strategy to address this. But I think there is so much more that we can learn from one another, and I look forward to hearing from you, speaking to you, and learning from you in the days ahead. So thank you very much.